we decided to dedicate the closing program to a very critical topic. Violence against women is a persistent problem. It increased during COVID because women were trapped at home. It has not decreased according to data that we've gotten, and instead has stayed there because some women now work remotely. And so this evening, I wanted to talk about what we can do, what we should do about fighting this scourge, which is in every country and in every home. And it manifests itself in different ways, whether in the era of conflict in which we happen to be in, used as an instrument of war, or at home, or at work in terms of sexual harassment and assault sometimes. So I've invited public officials as well as private sector leaders who can tell us what they're trying to do, as well as to give us their scope on the problem. So I want to begin with a summit favorite. The former president of Kosovo, Atifete Yayaga, is with us this evening. Her first, yes. Her first summit was Kuala Lumpur, right? In 2013, and then Paris in 2014, right? And then I can't remember the rest. But she is, everybody always asks me, is the president coming to this summit? Well, she's here with us tonight, so please give her a warm returning welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Irene, my dear friend, dear Minister Al-Shamsi, dear Kati Fotovat, my dear friend, Sonju, dear ladies, delegates from all over the world. It is with a great pleasure to be here today, and this is my fourth time as a speaker of the Global Summit of Women as it toured around the world. Each time I participate, we discuss different topics that are most pressing when it comes to gender equality and the rights of women and non-majority communities. With each participation for many years now, I take away to Kosovo the strength and the resilience of women that I meet here, whose stories are some of the most inspiring. On this note, I would like to thank Irene Natividad, who has been the driving force behind the Global Summit of Women and champion of Women-led Alliance through this platform. So thank you, Irene. Despite the joyfulness of Madrid, with its vibrant streets and a lively atmosphere, I find myself compelled to address a topic that should have long been left to the books of history, rather than remain a harsh reality for countless women around the globe: gender-based violence and the sexual violence used as a tool of war. It is a sad reminder of the pervasive challenges and injustices that persist in our world today, despite the progress we have made in other areas. This reality highlights the importance of our discussions and actions to address and eradicate such a violence. Sexual violence was used as a tool of war in my own country of Kosovo against thousands of women and men, with the purpose to incite fear and oppression upon innocent citizens, ethnic cleansing, to emasculate the man, to strip the whole society from its human values. Nearly 20,000 innocent citizens carry the scars of the heinous acts of the sexual abuse committed by the Milosevic regime in Serbia, forces who turned their bodies into the battlefield for the political gains. While we moved on the build of our future upon the rubbles of destruction and immense human suffering, struggling with the many challenges of building a peaceful, stable, and secure country, we left the victims of this horrendous crime to battle the shame, the isolation, and the social exclusion without the proper institutional and the social response. The unspeakable crime committed upon their bodies were speaking loudly of the unbearable crime, yet we were hardly ready to listen as a society to this human suffering, which was too difficult for us to face. In the first days of my mandate as the President of Kosovo back in 2011, I went to meet a group of women, survivors of the sexual violence during the war. I witnessed that the war for them still had not ended. Their memories of the crime were fresh, and the horrors of the suffering were weighing heavily on their shoulders. In these years, I have heard stories of women whose dreams of becoming mothers never came true when they lost their unborn child due to the inhuman act of violence committed upon them. I heard stories of mothers who witnessed their daughters being gang raped, beaten, tortured in front of them. Stories of women sexually abused in unspeakable ways in front of their husbands, fathers, in front of the whole village. Stories of the young children who have been and who have not survived the inhuman act. Stories of women who lost their families to the shame of this crime. Women and young girls left behind with a stain of shame engraved deep, deep in their bodies. But my dear ladies, in all these stories, I also witnessed the courage of the young girls and women who, despite everything, have found the strength to rebuild their lives, to take care of their children and families, who fight every day with the horrors they have lived and never have given up. Women who encourage each other to survive and to tell each other that they are the heroines of our society, because indeed they are. It is their strength and their courage which gives me hope that their pledge for national and international recognition of the crime, their pledge for justice, and their pledge for a life in peace will be heard. We still have, my dear ladies, a long way to go to offer them the justice they deserve. Still, 25 years after the war, there are only 7 cases of the conviction for those horrible crimes. Yet, we are more than ever determined to uphold our institutional and social obligation to seek justice for all the survivors. My dear ladies and gentlemen, we are still fighting the battle we have once won. We have abolished slavery, yet our girls today are enslaved. We have never thought that we would again witness such horrendous scenes of women, girls, children chained, sexually abused in the most heinous ways and sold as sex slaves. Witnessing unspeakable crimes which strip women, girls, children from their identity, we leave them in shame while the perpetrators walk free in the culture of impunity for the crimes that they have committed. This issue is not unique to Kosovo. It is a global problem. Even in the most advanced democracies and the wealthiest economies, we see remnants of this harmful mentality. To truly address gender-based violence, we must confront these deep-seated social attitudes and strive for the genuine gender equality in all aspects of our life. So, my dear ladies, in the grand scheme of things, I want to address another pressing issue that demands our immediate action and our immediate attention. Currently, two major conflicts are unfolding in front of our eyes: Russia-Ukraine and Israel-Palestine. In these conflicts, as in any other, it is the innocent who bear the brunt of the suffering. Women, children, and the elderly are the most vulnerable and are disproportionately affected. Despite recognition of the sexual violence as a crime against humanity, it continues to be used as a brutal weapon of war. This is because those who wage war often strip their opponents of their humanity, leaving soldiers to degrade and dehumanize the other side. As an international community, it is not enough to simply acknowledge these atrocities. We must relentlessly demand accountability from the leaders of the countries in conflict. We must raise our voices and refuse to rest until justice is served for each and every victim everywhere, at every corner of the world. Furthermore, once the conflict is over, our work is far from being finished. We must immediately begin the crucial task of supporting and treating survivors, especially the survivors of the sexual violence. We must establish robust support mechanisms and leave no stone unturned in bringing the perpetrators to justice. Drawing from the lessons of my own country of Kosovo, I know that swift action is imperative. As time passes, wounds become harder to heal and perpetrators escape unpunished. The longer we take to provide help, rehabilitation, and reintegration for the survivor, the more detrimental the consequences will be in our society. However, it's important to note that the implementation of a resolution 1325 is lacking. It is not legally binding. At this summit, let's advocate for the concrete action in decision-making forms. We must push for the increased women's representation in peace processes, peace negotiation, resources for women-led initiatives, and gender-sensitive policies. But my dear ladies, to achieve this, we must stand united, act as one, and persevere. Otherwise, we risk falling into the cycle of empty words and unchanged realities. To make this vision a reality, we all have a duty, and that duty is to act, to demand justice, and to ensure a brighter future for each and every one of us. I can say clear and loud that it's not only the victims who pay the price of the injustice inflicted upon them by this weapon of war, but it is the whole society which offers and is affected, and I speak out of my own experience. And we can put a stop to this tool of war, which is everywhere and every time, destroying lives in different corners of the world, destroying the fabrics of our humanity. But we need to act together and fight the culture of impunity. I'm aware, and we are aware, that we cannot change the past of the survivors of the sexual violence in conflict, but we can make sure to offer them justice. Foremost, we can make sure to end the sexual violence in conflict once and for all. So let us join this cause and protect our own humanity. And before I end, I want to conclude by thanking a very dear friend of mine, Kati Fotovat. She was just a few weeks ago in Kosovo, helping the presidency of Kosovo to establish the Center of Excellence for Women, Peace and Security, which will continue building on something that we started way before. Kat, thank you for doing that for the women of Kosovo and for the region. Thank you and gracias.
Thank you for reminding us, President Yayaga, of what we need to keep in mind. We can be the voice for more women in peacekeeping groups or peace-dealing groups after the wars, the conflicts are over. And we all hope to God that it will be over at some time. The other person I would like to invite to you, because the violence that occurs in war also occurs at home, and more times than we would like. And I would like to invite Marie-Pierre Rixain, who is the author of the Rixain Law, which is now uttered by many French women. And it's a comprehensive plan, if you will, to ensure economic equity, cultural, sexual equity, but there is a part of it that refers directly to victims of violence or potential victims. So let me introduce to you a member of the National Assembly of France who made it pass the Rixain Law. Marie-Pierre Rixain.
Dear Irene, thank you so much for your invitation. Dear ministers, dear Elizabeth, dear Muriel, ladies and gentlemen, in today's France, alarming statistics reveal that 23% of women suffer economic violence at the hands of their current partners, while a staggering 41% have faced forms of economic abuse in intimate relationships. These figures are not confined to France alone. Across Europe, an average of 12% women have endured economic violence perpetrated by their partner since the age of 15. Economic violence, often termed the hidden face of domestic violence, domestic abuse, operates insidiously, undermining a woman's economic autonomy and security. This form of abuse manifests in various ways, all of which contribute to the victim's financial dependency. Examples range from restricting access to money, own money, from controlling spending to sabotaging employment or educational opportunities. What's particularly concerning in the lack of legal recognition and protection for victims of economic violence in many countries. A recent report by Surviving Economic Abuse underscores the global scale of this issue, revealing that half of the world's countries lack and policy advice addressing economic abuse within relationships. This is why we wanted, in France, to create a legal framework to respond to this systemic violence. And I thank also dear Elizabeth Moreno, Minister, who supported this measure. So thank you, Elizabeth. In this law, we passed in 2021, aimed to accelerating economic and professional equality. The first 3 measures were designed to help victims of economic violence. First of all, bank accounts, are an especially important measure of financial inclusion, you know that. But do you know what women without an own banking account say because someone else in the family already has one? And this is the big issue when they are faced to domestic violence. To prevent partners exploiting by stealing their earnings, we decided to introduce the obligation to pay wages and individual social benefits into a banking account held by women. This act should help women enforce the right against partners seeking to confiscate their income. Then, to enhance economic autonomy and protection in case of domestic violence, we passed also a measure to facilitate the right to an own banking account, irrespective of their personal situation, granting access to basic banking services. Previously, in France, you know, holding a joint account precluded the right to open an own account. So when a woman wanted to leave their partner, especially in case of domestic violence, these legal frameworks proved to be an obstacle for the woman to leave. Of course, these measures are the starting point of a long journey. It is a long journey to fight gender-based economic violence. And fighting domestic violence is also a long journey for all of us. We have to thank also NGOs, we have to thank civil society, companies like everyone here, which are involved against domestic violence. I think, for instance, companies like ENGIE, for instance, which put during the COVID, you know, the emergency phone on their bill. So thank you so much also for this measure. Remember, implanting own bank account for women is a powerful means to protect them against violence. Financial inclusion is the first step to fight against domestic violence. Everybody must control his own financial life. Women must be involved in the money decisions for themselves, and especially when they have to face domestic violence. Thank you so much.
I do this so you guys don't feel left out, okay? Rotate. You know the importance of having your own bank account in your own name. What happens in many cases, family accounts is just one account. And then when a woman wants to leave, the first thing a man does is cut off the credit card, close the account, and she has nothing. So Rixon's law that makes provisions regarding an account in the woman's name, which is why we had a session on financial planning today. Now, we heard government voice. I would like you to hear a couple of companies that are trying to address this very issue. So soon we will hear from Mireia Munoz Alonso, and she is from AXA, Spain. AXA is an insurance company, and she works in the talent, culture, employee experience, and diversity and inclusion. So please welcome Mireia Munoz.
Good evening. It's a real honor to be here talking about something so important as protecting the victims of gender-based violence. But I would like to start by raising a question. Could you please raise your hand if you know any woman that has been a victim of gender violence? Could be a close relation or even a far acquaintance, a friend of a friend. Wow. Honestly, I didn't expect it, so many hands. Data also said the same. For example, in Spain, in 2023, the victims of gender-based violence increased by 10%. That means that every day we have 500 new cases. I think this is a burning platform. And companies, we have a role to play. We can do things to contribute in this situation. In AXA, our purpose is to act for human progress by protecting what matters. This matters, really matters. That's why years ago, in 2019, we created a program to protect our employees, our female employees that are victims of gender violence. In this program, of course, confidentiality is a must, but we also wanted to take one step further by training within our HR department a specialist advisor who can really accompany the victim through the whole process. And also, we raise awareness all across the organization because we need to engage everyone with the victims. In this program, we put the women at the center, trying to understand what they really need. And first and foremost, they need to feel safe. And of course they don't, and for real reasons. From a company perspective, we contribute offering total flexibility. They can work in full remote, they can work from another city, they can reduce their working hours, they can stop working wherever they need to be able to handle the situation they are facing. Of course, we have other kind of measures like giving them a parking space with vigilance so they can feel safe. But also they need social support. That's why our specialist advisor helped them through the process, but also all of our leaders, all of our managers are specifically trained to accompany in this situation and also to detect that something is happening and to open up spaces where we can have this kind of conversations. But also it's very important to support the women from a financial and legal perspective. For example, in our company, if a woman who is a victim decides to reduce the working hour, we don't reduce the salary because we understand that the payroll for them is really critical. And also, if they need to stop working, we hold the position for them for 2 years. We provide free legal advice, free counseling to help them in the process. And last but not least, psychological support. Women who are victims of gender violence are 5 times more likely to have mental health issues, anxiety, depression, post-traumatic disorders, even to commit suicide. So this is critical. Mental health is a pandemic all over the world, but they are especially vulnerable. That's why we offer totally free psychological therapy, but also free coaching, because at a point, they will need to create a new life with a new concept of family, a new house maybe, living in a new city, doing a different thing. So we coach them to redesign this life according to the values so they can thrive. But this is not enough. We need to engage all of our workforce, the managers, the employees, the specialist advisor. We train them all. Even in our onboarding process, every new employee in AXA is trained about how to act in a case of gender violence. But also we realize that most of the women that are victims are not working. They struggle to join the workforce. They struggle to find a job. So we said, we need to go one step further. Let's try to make a mark in society. And through our non-profit organization, AXA Hearts in Action, all of our employees volunteer to train women to do a CV, to handle a job interview, to look for a job, and most important, to regain the personal confidence to do it. This is just a quick glance in our program. But in AXA we believe, and I personally believe, that being a woman shouldn't be a risk. But today, it is. All over the world, women are more exposed to risk, more exposed to violence. And we need to do more. We have a responsibility to act. Let's hope that if we meet again, I don't know, in 5 years, in 10 years, and if I ask the same question, nobody is raising the hand. We have to do more. Let's do it. Thank you.
Thank you, AXA, for that comprehensive strategy for addressing it for your employees. I like the aspect of mental health, physical health, their work schedule. I think that's really very thorough. And now we'll hear from PepsiCo, from Gabriela Garcia Cortez, who's the Senior Vice President and Chief People Officer for PepsiCo Latin America. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I am deeply grateful for the opportunity to be here in such outstanding global forum of women. And after hearing of so many fabulous human beings, it is a real challenge to be standing here. So it's an honor to participate in this space and discuss and commit to address the barriers and obstacles that we face as women in the society. And we must strive for equality. With collective action and determination, we are taking firm and accelerated steps towards a more equitable and just future. Today, I want to begin my participation by pointing out two alarming facts reported by UN Women. The first one is that between 63 and 76% of women in Latin America have experienced an episode of gender violence in different areas of their lives. In other words, 7 out of 10 women in my region have suffered psychological or physical violence. The second one that I'm going to share with you is even more shocking. In the November 2023 report, also by UN Women, highlights a worrying trend, the persistent escalation of intentional homicides for women. Over the past 20 years, we have witnessed an alarming increase, reaching the highest number record in 2022, with the tragic murder of 89,000 girls and women worldwide. Behind these statistics, they are faces of women and girls who have been intentionally wounded because of their gender. And sadly, many of them are no longer with us. For this reason, and from this space of vital importance, I make an urgent call for each of us to act from our own place, from our respective trenches, because gender violence must stop. The harrowing reality we face should motivate all of us to join action between governments, companies, and civil society. For this reason, as a leading food and beverage company in the private sector, we are committed to leading in the business world and solving critical problems such as gender violence. The Rompamos el Ciclo campaign, or in English, Let's Break the Cycle with Ruffles, reflect our commitment. We understood that to make a real change, we needed to engage with men as perpetrators and encourage them to embrace the change. This is why we chose Ruffles. This brand has been iconic for most young men. However, Ruffles' commitment addressing domestic violence also stems from recognizing the impact that all brand communications have played in this issue. Until a few years ago, Ruffles brand's communications had objectified women and showed them in negative, stereotypical ways. To rectify this, in 2021, Ruffles launched this new campaign platform, Unleash Your Flavor, championing authenticity and self-expression as the essential sources of irresistibility. However, in LATAM, self-expression can be difficult in most of the population. Still, Ruffles decided to take the challenge and do more to be part of the solution. Because we knew we couldn't do it alone, we needed experts driving the change to be involved. And this is why we decided to partner with two NGOs, Red Nacional de Refugios, the National Shelter Network, to address the urgent need to provide safety for women and their children escaping violence, and Yendes to support men struggling to manage their anger and frustration. These partnerships are not just one-offs. Initially, we committed for a 3-year agreement to reach more people effectively, and together we launched the campaign Rompamos el Ciclo, aiming to break the cycle of violence against women. This campaign includes a video that we will see soon that exposes some of the violence experienced in Mexico, which is perfectly extrapolated to all Latin America. It is a video designed to detonate much-needed conversations of this issue because violence always escalates. Therefore, this campaign aims to detect and point out from its very beginning. Only through the power of communication, information, and raising awareness, it is possible to denaturalize violent attitudes that perpetrate sexist behaviors and collectively build an egalitarian world with zero tolerance for violence against women. It is not necessarily to reach physical violence to act. Let's deconstruct from the first violence. Sexist behaviors and gender violence tend to be expected in environments as relevant as the family. And that is precisely where we want to expose and exchange the campaign to have significant impact. For PepsiCo, society, in this case, Red Nacional de Refugios and Yendes, are fundamental for this effort. And they're not only accompanying us throughout the planning process and content of the campaign. In addition, we underpin their social work, giving more significant resources to both to expand their care capacity. First one, offering comprehensive legal and psychological help, as well as shelter and protection for women victims of violence. And Yendes, helping violent men who ask for support to deconstruct themselves, promoting deep reflection and behavior change through assertive interventions. To be able to feel in this forum how crucial the collective work between the private sector and society is, and thus positively permeate our culture with the eradication of violence.
Yo llegué por violencia familiar de todo tipo, psicológico, físico, económico. Lo único que me pasó por la cabeza fue no regresar.
Me contaron de esto, pero yo no creía, pensaba que no era en verdad, que eran solo cuentos o fantasías.
Desde el momento en que llegamos, nos dieron ropa, nos dieron calzado. Cada familia tiene, sí, su propio espacio.
Gracias a los refugios somos lo que somos, aprendemos a vivir sin violencia.
Yo llegué a Yendes por haber cometido una violencia física de contacto en contra de mi pareja. A través de su psicólogo nos invitaron a que yo tomara este modelo. Utilicé la línea Yendes porque cometí un acto de violencia en la calle contra una persona. Pues se necesita una ayuda porque yo solo no puedo. Es muy importante pues la labor para que se difunda y podamos erradicar el machismo.
As the testimonies reflect, being sensible and having timely attention to victims and perpetrators can change lives. For these reasons, in collaboration with civil society, we have expanded the dissemination of this effort through and reach out new alliances such as Conciencia Cinemex and Cine Vagón, which is a project which presents the message in free cinema screenings in communities in vulnerable situations, thus increasing the visibility and impact of this initiative among those who need it the most and have fewer resources at hand to ask for help. Rompamos el Ciclo has created to break several stereotypes rooted in Latam society. The gender violence happens only in low-income family, that is perpetrated only by older men, that it's not okay for men to ask for help. The launch film explores how exposure to domestic violence at a young age creates a cycle of abuse, with young people who observe violence being 3 times more likely to commit it as adults. But we couldn't simply vilify the perpetrators. Pointing a finger of blame would only push them further away. We need to pull these men and inspire them to want to change. So we created this film to launch our campaign and raise awareness for this stereotype we're trying to break. What are the results? The campaign has now become a revolution. In the first 2 months alone, the launch film over 45,000 views with hundreds of passionate comments. 73 news outlets provided coverage, creating another 45,000 organic impressions, and dozens of influencers have shared the campaign in their millions of subscribers. Ruffles have also begun running anti-violence workshops for men in their teams. But the best of all is that in the first month post-launch, Red Nacional de Refugios had 25% lift in calls, and Gender had 112 lift from men seeking to manage their anger. And this is just the beginning. We're committed to continue to promote this cause, and it's the right thing for the brand and for all of us. But our approach is just the local initiatives. Through the Global Compact Project, we have led groups since 2021 to combat gender violence in the corporate sphere throughout Latin America, achieving a attractive practical guide to prevent and address gender violence in the corporate world. In addition, the guidelines in 2021, last year, PepsiCo and the Boston Center provided support to 22 large companies, helping them design and draft protocols to prevent and address cases of gender discrimination and violence. With personal mentor to each of these 22 companies, we reduced by 75% the time companies would have taken to achieve their own protocols. The investment was 3 months weekly with mentoring sessions, and as you can see, the results were invaluable. Why do we do all this? In PepsiCo, we just don't only care about business success. We're passionately dedicated to building a more just and equitable society where everybody throughout enjoys their rights and equal access to development opportunities. We're committed to continue the work tirelessly to amplify this message and break down barriers so campaigns like Rompamos el Ciclo have a transformative effect in our society and no more girl or women suffers violence. I invite you to join the cause, Rompamos el Ciclo, for gender discrimination and violence. Let each of us be part of the solution. Let's deconstruct a team and make it equitable and tangible reality. Thank you so much, and let's leave gender violence behind and relegate the past.
Thank you so much. When Gabby and I first started talking about this, she said the root is cultural. And so she started talking about the ads, you know, in which they could somehow impact on the culture through a brand usually used by men. But now it has expanded to other kinds of interventions. And what I love is that it's spilling over to other companies within the region. Bravo. Thank you. Somebody said, why are we closing the summit program with violence against women? It's the reality of women's lives. It is an economic issue, as we've sort of mentioned throughout. It's part of the reason why women are stalled and they don't talk about it. It is the secret that is really not a secret. It's the reality of many women's lives. And I thank our government officials and our private sector partners in trying to stop this. I'm sure there are other efforts among the companies represented by all of you here that we can hear about again. But we need more, because if there is such a program, why does it keep increasing? Okay? This is all, as Gabby said, this is our problem as well. And as women leaders, let's figure out how we can help in whatever way we can. So thank you so much to all of you for this wonderful contribution on what we're trying to prevent.